Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everybody, depending on which part of the world you're joining us from today. And welcome to the ThePackHub's latest packaging webinar. My name is Paul Jenkins. I'm Managing Director of UK Packaging Innovation Consultancy, ThePackHub. Delighted again to be joined by my colleague, Barry Pamplin, Technical Director, who will be fielding the questions later. Also delighted to be joined by two people from Mondi organisation. We've got Graeme Smith, Head of Product Sustainability, and Andreas Bergmeier, EcoSolutions Innovation and Product Development Manager, and they'll be doing a presentation shortly. What we'll cover in the next 55 minutes or so is we'll have, as always, just 60 seconds on the ThePackHub and the Innovation Zone. So, so you just know a little bit more about the ThePackHub. We'll then do an introduction to Aegis paper, which is where Graeme and Andreas come into their own. Mondi developed a fully integrated value chain solution, and they've successfully launched a range of fully recyclable barrier papers, from base papers to coated functional barrier papers and converted packaging solutions. So really looking forward to hearing from Graeme and Andreas shortly. We'll then have a Q&A, and as I said, Barry will manage that. Details of our next event. Don't forget to get your questions in. We'll have a Q&A session at the end, as I said, so please make sure you get the opportunity at the bottom to type in any questions. So please get your questions over to us, and we'll hopefully get them answered. You will get a recording to the event, the webinar recording post-event, and that'll be available tomorrow. And you can also visit youtube.com/ThePackHub for all our video content. So 60 seconds on the ThePackHub. As a lot of you will be aware, we've 4 main areas of service: technical support and project management, events, or more recently has been webinars, more than face-to-face, our Innovation Zone packaging database, and packaging reports. We've just recently launched our Global Packaging Trends Compendium 2021 as an example. The Innovation Zone is an easy-to-use packaging database with nearly 4,600 packaging initiatives, 20 new innovations every week, from concept to market launch. A really good way of keeping up to speed with what's going on. Got lots of members from brands, retailers, and packaging suppliers, including from Mondi. So now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to the Mondi gentlemen. Are you able to share your screen, Graeme?
Yes, in the process of doing that now. Okay, I think you should be able to see my first slide.
I think that's still my slide. Let me stop this. If I stop my share, that might mean now try sharing. Over to you, Graeme. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. Thanks very much, Paul. Great to be here, and thanks very much for the invitation. And thanks to the ThePackHub in general, because we realise that it's a very agile market that we're all in, and keeping us up to date on new innovations and stories are great to hear. So thanks very much. So today, as the first slide suggests, we're here to try and introduce to you the Aegis paper range. But before we go deep into the Aegis paper range, I just want to kind of set the scene slightly, try to paint a picture of how we've got to Aegis paper in this. So when it comes down to it, we appreciate that we do need, there's a need for packaging. We realise that packaging can increase shelf life, it can protect the product to which it's being packaged. There's a bit of portion control availability, controlling aspect. And we realise as well that transportation of a product to A to B is very critical. And the need for packaging, as I say, is absolutely there. And in the past, what we've used is materials that are available. Here we see the extreme element of a banana leaf, but over time we started to appreciate a little bit more as to what actual requirements, products that were packaging needed, what technical aspects the packaging needed to have, and the possible barrier properties that are needed in order to have those shelf life and protection elements of the product. Because as we know, we need to make sure that we fundamentally protect the item in which we're packaging. So we moved on, obviously, from banana leaves. Ironically, we might have got back to there, but we'll come back to that. But we moved on from banana leaves and moved into some more rigid packaging, traditional packaging like glass and tin. And they have worked incredibly well in order to, again, give those shelf life and protection and transportation elements. But with further understanding and further development, we realized that something more needed to be done. We needed to realize that there's a degree of complexity there that we needed to understand as far as the items of packaging. And we started to develop materials which were at a higher level of packaging elements. And here we can obviously see a basic plastic package in front of us. Flexible plastic packaging designed to be as efficient as possible to pack and process, designed to be as thin as possible to make the most of the capabilities of the raw material that it's being made from as well. But as I say, we started to look more at the extended shelf life we could give it. We started to appreciate that we could develop more and more different types of solutions. And then that simple plastic packaging became slightly more complex. There became mixed materials, became, for example, some PET and polyethylene combinations. There might even be some aluminium in there in order to increase the shelf life. So more and more, we started to make that plastic packaging more complex. And it started to become more and more difficult to establish what could be done with the end of life of that product. Because the call for circularity was started to become more loud in our ears. We started to appreciate that we needed to respect the end of life of the product. And we needed to try and make sure that that product did have a waste stream that it could go into and something that could be reprocessed into something else. In the background, we obviously have paper. So paper obviously is a fully recyclable material, something that's made from a renewable resource. We need to take care and make sure that that renewable resource is fully certified in order to make sure we look after the environment to which it's made from and the resource that it's made from as well. But in paper, we've got a material that pretty much everybody knows what to do with. They know what to do as far as what gets to its end of life. There is generally a waste paper stream that it can find its way into. And the recycling element of paper is second to none. A huge proportion of paper is recycled and up to 80% in many places. So people knew what to do with paper. They realized it can be used for a packaging element. They realized that it can be recycled. They realized it can be from that renewable resource, which, as I said, if certified, is a great way of reassuring that that chain of custody of material is secure for years to come. But one thing that paper doesn't generally have is that element of functionality, the element of being able to use paper for something else. Because that aspect of functionality would start to mean that we could look at aspects where paper, with some functionality, could, in some instances, replace flexible plastic packaging. The aspect of paper being flexible, you've still got that element of size control. You've got that transportation element that you're able to get a lot of ratio of material to the content of products. So it's a really efficient way of packaging. But at the same time, you need to make sure that it still has those barrier properties that are essential for that packaged item. I said before, we were starting to understand a little bit more about what items we needed to package. We understand what elements are required in order to give the barrier properties that are required in order to make sure that that material is correct to be used. And we're not saying that the material could be used across the board. We need to make sure that there's no unintended consequences from that transition from one material to another. And here is where that delicate balance needs to be struck. That's where we need to develop and make sure that the barrier properties that we might put in place onto paper are ones that are still fully recyclable, but do actually make sure that they protect the product that's inside. And to give a general idea of where we see the platform and the variety of different barriers, Here's a slide that explains it from one extreme to the next. On the far left-hand side, you've got highly renewable material, highly recyclable paper bag. And we'll actually talk about that later on. And on the far right-hand side, you have a product that's got an aluminium foil inside as well. These multi-materials that can be difficult to recycle and difficult to know just exactly what to do at the end of life. And everywhere in between is where we start to develop and become more creative. And this is where we start to realize that in some instances, we can swap out plastic for paper. We can use paper where possible and plastic where useful. And as I said before, we're not trying to completely replace all plastic, because we do appreciate that those barrier properties that plastic has, those intense gas layer properties that they have and water vapor transmission, is something that is incredibly difficult to achieve with a fiber-based solution. Something that we're working on, but it's an element that we need to make sure that plastic is always available for those applications. But as I say, there's a sweet spot in the middle. There's an element where if we take a fiber-based product, we apply a coating of some description, we are able to impart some kind of technical ability that that material has. We're able to give it some kind of functionality where it does have a degree of barrier. It does have a degree of elements that it can protect that food packaging, so that food elements to increase its shelf life to an acceptable level to where it's consumed. It can still give that element of portion control. It still is able to protect that product during transportation until its final use. And it's here where we see our development and how we're going to talk about today. It's here with our portfolio of products that we'd like to discuss with you today, just exactly what we think is possible, what we've actually developed, and give you reasons for why we've developed. So here, I will pass on to Andreas, and he'll give you a bit more detail on the background of the Aegis paper range and what it's capable of. Andreas.
Hi, Andreas, are you able to share your screen?
Andreas?
Sorry, I was starting while I was still muted. So thanks, Graeme, for introduction and for handing over. I hope you can hear me now.
Yes, we can.
Great. So having a view on paper packaging, Mondi has really a unique position. So we are fully integrated along the value chain. That means from the trees to the ready converted functional paper, we do all production steps in-house. We do have our own Aegis base, the base paper for these Aegis papers. We do have our own coatings. We do water-based dispersion coatings or extrusion coatings. And then we have our own Mondi consumer flexibles, where we have our own converting division that has access to the market and knows exactly the requirements of the packaging materials of our customers, has contact to machine suppliers, know what really packaging needs and what we need to convert into paper that it runs on the packaging lines at the customer. And along this supply chain, we have all degrees of freedom to produce the best functional paper to protect your product. So if we use our own base paper, we have good reasons to do that, it's fine. But we can't be world champion in each and every discipline. So if we find a better paper, a better coated paper or whatever, everywhere in the market, we are free to choose the right raw material to produce the best functional paper. And how we do that and what we are focusing on, you see on the next page. Could you click further, please, Graeme? Thanks. So having a look at the barriers, we have 4 focus areas. Water vapor and oxygen is quite obvious and well known in paper packaging or packaging as well in general. Grease is a bit more differentiated. When we look at from the paper point of view, the kit level, it's well established and well known. And we have already achieved in our functional paper a level of 12. It's rated by 1 to 12, so 12 is the best. But we have also our internal test method that is even more closer to practical life, and we can assess if these grease barrier is really suitable for the application of the customer, and we can more or less customize our products to that and really test it in practical life. Mineral oil was a bit more in the background in the last years, but it was a hot topic many years ago. And for many customers, it's still a mandatory barrier that we protect the content from mineral oils from outside, and we are well prepared for that. We do have our internal measurement. We have external partners that can certify that. And as I said, we are well prepared for that if it's mandatory. We can do it. But besides barrier, it's also quite nice when packaging paper can be processed on packaging lines and seals well. And this is, as I said before, a good reason to use our own Mondi-based paper, because there we have our strengths. We have special mechanical properties like tear resistance, puncture resistance, and so on in our paper due to our Mondi-owned paper producing process. And these special mechanical properties allows a good processability on the packaging lines, that the packaging paper withstands a further process in transportation in the shelf and bring it home for the customer, and also allows a good sealability, because sealability is not only an issue about using the right sealing material, you also need a tough paper behind it. So if you have a weak paper, you have a weak seal. If you would have it. So you also need a good sealing material, and we are also working on that to improve the output on the packaging line, because that's still an issue in paper packaging. And we have done very good trials with our partners at the machine producer side, and we can be really convinced that we have a nice package to offer in this case. So in the next slide, you will see where it led us so far. What is our Aegis paper offering? And here you see our Aegis paper range, our range of functional paper. So we have the Aegis paper select, where you can select the different barriers that is needable for your application for your products, like oxygen barrier, as I said before, and water vapor barrier, and so on. And there's also the Aegis paper 95.5 grade. That's from the name quite self-explaining. So 95.5 means that you have at least 95% paper content. And that's needed that it can be recyclable in paper waste streams like in Germany to fulfill this 95.5 rule. We have also paper grades without the 95.5 naming that are also fulfilling the 95.5 rule, but this is a special group focused on 95% paper share. And the Aegis paper reduce is where you, let's say different. If you have a look at the waste hierarchy, you see that it's more important to avoid waste before recycling. So this is a thinner gauge of paper where you don't have this high paper share of 95%, but you have lower grammages in total. So we are starting here at a total grammage of 39 gram per square meter. So replacing plastic structures by a thinner gauge, although it has not a paper share of 95%, can make sense, because thinner gauges have also other benefits. Obviously, lower cost per square meter, more meter per reel, so less storage space because you have more reels on the pallet. More meter per reel also means that you have less reel changes, less work for the operators, less waste on your packaging line. So very good reasons for that. And all these functional paper from Mondi contain at least 85% paper share. So it can be recycled in many countries all over Europe. And we have also certified our recyclability by external partners that we'll show later on. And yeah, so you have a certain paper share, you are certified recyclable, and how we do it, I will show on the next page. All our paper have been certified by different external partners. I guess most of us know PTS and their traffic light logic to evaluate the recyclability of paper. And all our paper have achieved green in all areas with very high recycling rate. And that is the minimum standard for us, that we are achieving a PTS positive certification for recycling for our functional paper. In addition, we can make inter-zero certificates. We have done it for some of our grades and achieved 19 of 20 points, but really an excellent result. To achieve the 20 points, because that was my first question, why not 20? Even if it is great, why it's not the best? For that one, we would need to have a paper-based sealing layer, what is not available today. So therefore, 19 is the optimum for us today, and it is a great result from inter-zero. For French market, we have the CEREC certification. For the UK, the OPRL, and others will follow later as well. So what can we do with these papers? So we can see it on the next slide, please. A wide range of applications. And there are a lot of applications we have tested, and you see some here. But there are many more, and I'm happy to discuss your product requirements and determine the right product of Aegis paper for your product. You can see here some examples, but due to our excellent strength properties, the great mechanical properties, there are many more applications possible, many more applications tested. We can show everything here. And together with our barrier, we have a great product to protect your product and make a nice eco-friendly story around it. One success story I would like to share on the next slide. It is with our customer Hermann Kreuter. It will be published soon, so you will have more information about it in the news later. I can already tell you that they pack fresh herbals in our packaging paper, and they save 60 tons of waste every year by replacing a polyolefin-based packaging by our Aegis paper. And due to our water vapor barrier, it's possible to keep these herbals fresh in the paper packaging. And what was very important for this customer to have a recyclable option for Germany. And this is possible with this grade. These are the 95.5 grades that you can recycle in Germany in the paper waste stream. The consumer can easily dispose it into the blue bin at home, and he knows where he needs to put it. It's a great story around it. And many other success stories will follow. And yeah, so with this example of new ways to create economical friendly packaging, I would like to hand over to Graeme again. And I'm happy to hear questions about what I've shown you about Aegis paper, about all the options that we do have, and see if this one is also something that could fit to your needs, and be sure we have much more under development that could be exactly the right product for you. Please keep in contact with us. I'm happy to hear questions about it. Hand over to Graeme now. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Andreas. Good getting an idea of our Aegis paper range. To say there's a lot of different applications that Aegis paper range covers. So I would encourage you to get in contact with us, ask us questions later on, or get in contact later on for a further in-depth conversation about how the variety of paper solutions that we provide can meet your applications and be substitute for or substitute out some plastic packaging. I think we've shown that the variety of different approaches that we take for a portfolio of materials such as Aegis shows that we're trying to be sustainable by design. We're trying to show and understand the fact that we appreciate the barriers that are required, and we're developing materials in order to make sure they can replace, reduce, or can be recycled other materials which are less sustainable. And here I think we can draw upon a huge portfolio of knowledge and expertise across the globe on these two particular materials. Because when you start looking at our footprint in general, we have a significantly global footprint, 26,000 employees, mainly focused in Europe, but a good global footprint across the board, where our business is actually broken up into 4 separate distinct areas. 4 areas being corrugated packaging, flexible packaging, engineered materials, and uncoated fine paper. We're about 75–80% fiber products and 20% plastic. But it means, as I said, we're able to stride across this element of packaging where we are able to provide flexible plastic solutions where that's required and where the barrier needs them and the processing needs them, and paper solutions with barrier coatings, as you've now seen, in order to substitute out less sustainable solutions. On a corrugated packaging, for example, we are #1 virgin container boards in Europe. Flexible packaging, #1 kraft paper globally. Engineered materials, we're the #1 commercial release liner. And that release liner technology and knowledge of coating comes incredibly useful when it comes to understanding paper coating solutions and the way in which we approach our solutions in general. And #1 in uncoated fine paper in Europe. So as I mentioned, a great strength across the globe, very specifically focused at the European markets for our particular products. But that element of focus that we have across technical expertise on paper and plastic, I feel puts us in an unprecedented area in order to help discuss with you what requirements you have for your products, how we can select papers that will achieve the end application that you're looking for, and design barriers in order to make sure they keep your product fresh and the shelf life that you're wanting. As Andreas mentioned, we operate across the full value chain. And this gives us a great amount of security when it comes to sustainability. We manage our own forests and raw materials, incredibly important when it comes to fiber-based solutions, because you need to make sure that those renewable resources are well looked after. So our certified wood sources are something that we're very proud of, something that we're completely transparent on, and something that we make sure we maintain and work to develop even better with our suppliers in order to make sure we maintain those certifications. We have our own pulp and paper mills in order to process that material as it comes into us. And as I say, the technology behind processing paper, technology behind making sure the formulation of fiber that's used correctly, and even the technology used to process the material in general is of the highest possible quality to make sure that we make a paper that's designed for the application in question. Whole host of variety of converting operations. We have well over 100 sites across the globe, and those converting operations draw upon, again, great expertise from paper bag manufacturing, from converting of plastic flexibles and laminated materials as well. So a huge amount of converting operations with world-class production facilities and transparency across the board on that. Then we come to packaging and paper solutions. At the end of going through all that long process, we do have a material which is used for packaging. We do have a material which has got a full traceability element of its credibility, and at the same time is a sustainable solution for your end applications. And being able to make sure it is more sustainable, being able to make sure it's measured is also something that we're capable of doing. For fibers in particular, paper profiling is a particular way of analysing the footprint that that product has. We also have our own greenhouse gas calculator in order to make sure that the analysis of one material to another is calculated on that particular level. And we have our own environmental impact calculator, our PIA tool, in order to assess and coordinate and compare different materials in order to make sure that the products that we supply to yourselves are more sustainable than your existing solution. And of course, once we've made the product, once we've sold it to yourselves, once it's been consumed by the end user, it needs to be recycled. And this is the point that we're quite keen on. This is the element of making sure that the end of life is something now that we're fully respectful of. We're trying to make sure that the materials that we're processing at the moment are designed for recycling and have the end of life in its mind. Because we need to make sure that those mixed plastic materials that were made in the past transition over to monomaterials where possible, and where the new paper solutions that we're talking about today have a coating on them, but that coating doesn't disrupt the existing recycling process that we go through. After all, Mondi reprocesses 1.5 million tons of fibre every year, And that is something that we are incredibly good at, and we have full vision of how to reprocess that fibre material. So again, it's that element of expertise, that element of circularity, that element of knowledge that we have that we feel puts us above the rest when it comes to being able to manufacture the material from that chain of custody of wood source that we spoke about before. The conversion operations, which are world-class and leading, this variety and portfolio of solutions that we provide, because we need to make sure that is a full portfolio, because we already appreciate that not one solution will tick everybody's box. We need to make sure that we design our materials for your application. And of course, as I mentioned, at the end of life in mind, in order to make sure that we can keep the material where possible in circulation. I think you've got a general feeling by now that sustainability is at the heart of what everything that Mondi does. The Mondi way is something that we've lived by for some time now, where our culture, purpose, and strategy is driven by sustainability. I've mentioned before the strapline of being sustainable by design. It's something that we live and breathe by. We need to make sure that we contribute to a better world by making sure that innovative solutions are sustainable and are new to the packaging and paper solutions that you require. Drive value accretive growth from sustainability, because we need to make sure we invest in the assets to give us a cost advantage in order to pass that on to yourselves to be most effective and efficient with the solutions that you provide. And we love to partner with customers for innovation. Customers, academia, NGOs, the like, in order to make sure the partnerships that we provide are making solutions not just for today, but with foresight for tomorrow, to establish that we're designing these products in order to make sure that we're going to be around for a while and they close that circularity loop. And then we want to grow, create, inspire together, because we realize that people are at the heart of what we do, and we need to be respectful and look out for each other to make sure that we can encourage each other to drive that consistency in developing. But for the last 10 years, we've been using our growing responsible model. It's guided our approach to the way in which we drive sustainability. And I think so far we've shown that it's been incredibly successful in the way in which we've done. But we appreciate that we need to develop. We appreciate that we need to move on. We need to set ourselves aspirational goals and be leaders in the way in which we drive our approach to sustainability. And here is where we've taken the next step. The next step is our Mondi action plan, our 2030 approach in setting our plan to be out and contribute to a better world. Here, we've got 3 very clear targets and pillars of work plans that we're working towards in order to make sure that we drive sustainability throughout our business. Here, we're looking to drive circular-driven solutions with created and empowered people, and by taking action on the climate to make a better world. Circular-driven solutions are at the heart of where we can communicate with yourselves. We can make sure that we collaborate together in order to develop these new solutions, understand the key critical elements that you need, and make sure that we delight your customers in making sure that the material is sustainable as well. But as I said before, we realize as well that people are at the heart of everything that we do. So we need to empower and include the way in which we drive them. We need to make sure that the team contributes and make sure that, that there's an element there of driving up to a better world. But when it comes down to it, it's worth nothing if we don't actually look after our climate, because the other two drive us in order to make sure that the opportunity of that climate impact is second to none. We need to make sure that the sustainable solutions that we offer to yourselves actually have positive impact in the way in which we protect the climate and look after our world. We've used it before already today, and we do believe that paper where possible, plastic where useful is a great strapline, but not just a strapline, it's something that we live by. Because here we can start to, as mentioned before, assess the technical requirements that you need and develop new products in order to make sure that they achieve their technical aspirations. But critically, as I mentioned before, we need to make sure that we do this, but do it in a way where we don't have any unintended consequences. We do this with our EcoSolutions approach, where it's our customer-centric approach to try and make sure that you achieve your sustainability goals. Because as I mentioned before, we realize that not everybody has the same strategic sustainability goals. We realize that some people approach it slightly differently. Some people have a variety of different markets to achieve in, and we need to make sure that we have a solution to help you achieve that. And just to run through a few examples how we've managed to do this, and these are products that are already on the market. Here on the left-hand side, we see the EcoVantage product. So EcoVantage is a paper solution that we've invented, which is a blend of recycled fibers and fresh fibers in order to give a particularly strong, high-performance shopping bag. Something which, again, fully recyclable across a large geographical footprint. Everybody knows what to do with that product when it comes to its end of life. But because of its efficiency, because of its high performance, it's probably a bit thinner than you would expect and a lot stronger than you would expect. So the reusable aspect of that EcoVantage bag is significantly better than you would appreciate from a normal standard paper bag. The Advantage Smooth White Strong, again, paper-based packaging for pasta, where the option for having a large paper window is also in there as well in order for you to still see the products inside. And that transition away from difficult to recycle plastic packaging or just simply a package which has got a higher chance of being recycled in the first place is fairly easy to sell on the back of this Advantage Smooth White Strong. A great product in the market at the moment, and as I said, that high percentage of recyclability is second to none. And here on the far right-hand side, you've got a performing product, a thermoformable paper-based tray, which is replacing rigid plastics. We see a significant reduction in CO2 footprint by being able to transform from a plastic rigid solution to a paper-based solution, which of course, you can separate the top material away from the base and it becomes fully recyclable. Again, great solution, going towards that, ensuring the end of life of the material is taken into account, and it keeps that material critically circulating in the circular economy. We also look at reducing plastic solutions with our corrugated solutions. And here, again, is some examples of where we've gone through that process. Left-hand side, we have the Coral tray, a fully corrugated alternative to rigid plastic packaging for punnets. It's easy to see again, it's 100% recyclable, and it's easy for that tray to find its end of use, because to say the collection mechanism and the recyclability of paper is second to none. The envelope mailer is again 100% renewable and recyclable, and still able to protect the products inside, just as good as the LVP or other carriers that might be involved. And you can even use it again by making sure that you have a resealable strip on it again, so it can be sent back and reused. And in this time of increased e-commerce, that aspect of reusability, and once it's been reused and it fits its end of life, you start then to be able to put it into a paper waste stream, is again that aspect of it being fully recyclable and able to keep the material in circulation. And on the right-hand side, you see where our ingenuity has reached out to being able to replace bigger three-dimensional objects. And here, our corrugated system has been re-engineered and designed to eliminate the use of EPS, of expanded polystyrene. It's no secret, but we've won a further 6 World Star Awards this year. And that aspect of being able to redesign our corrugated solutions in order to reduce plastic and packaging and improve the way in which our items are packaged in general has been a great success. And again, that aspect of e-commerce means that it's something that we greatly need to make sure that once again, when the material achieves its end of life, it does actually find its way into the recycling chain. And finally, we look at our plastic-based solutions, where here the design for recycling is absolutely critical. We spoke before about having a multi-plastic, a multi-layer material, complex in order to separate, complex sometimes in order to recycle. But here we've been able to design our flexible plastic solutions in order to make sure it has recyclability at its heart. On the left-hand side, you see barrier pack recyclable, mono material here, but now being able to design with various gas barriers in order to make sure that you have that extended shelf life. And as I say, when it comes to its end of life, being able to recycle it in the plastic chain is becoming much more common these days. In the center, we have our thermoforming product. Here, we have our oxygen barrier as standard, but it's a fully thermoformable, fully recyclable material. So again, still respecting that aspect of technical requirement that the product needs in order to make sure it meets its shelf life, but being able to be 100% recyclable as well means we are respecting that end of life, and again, keeping the material in circulation. And on the far right-hand side, aluminium replacement. One of the more challenging aspects of being able to make sure you've got that high barrier concentration, that element of being able to make sure that you've got a high gas barrier, but being able to make sure again that it's fully recyclable, a mono material that fits so many collection mechanisms these days is incredibly critical. A good selection of materials, and as I said before, the aspect of having a portfolio of material from Mondi means that we're able to speak to you on so many different levels, on your food packaging, primary packaging in general, and even on your secondary and tertiary packaging, where we can use our extended technology of fibre production, of corrugated production, of corrugated engineering, in order to make sure that we are more sustainable by design. So with that, I'd like to say thanks for your attention. I hope we've given you a taste of just exactly what makes Mondi, what makes our approach slightly different, we feel, to everyone else's. We need to make sure that we continue asking those difficult questions, those correct questions, the right questions, so that we fully understand what you're looking for, and design from our variety of different skilled technicians and capabilities and vast knowledge base, a solution which is more sustainable by design for our customers. Thanks very much, and we are happy taking questions.
Thank you very much, Graeme. That was excellent, really informative. We've got quite a few questions. Let me just see if I can share my screen. Barry, are you available? Are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Over to you, Barry.
Okay, yeah, there's a number of questions come in. I don't know if the guys from Mondi have been able to see them yet. But if I start at the top, are PFAS chemicals intentionally added to create the barriers, is the first question.
Sorry, could you repeat the question, please? I guess it was a technical one and I should answer that.
Yeah, it's are PFAS chemicals intentionally added to create the barriers?
No, it isn't.
That was a very easy answer. Next question, do you have an ovenable 220-degree dispersion coated paper solution for hot food applications which are also compostable?
Very easy to answer. No, it's because at these temperatures, our coatings would start to melt.
Okay, what is the maximum temperature you can get to?
Ovenable is not possible because there you would, even in plastic packaging, you would need to use polyester, and there also a special polyester that can withstand these temperatures. And our paper is made for room conditions, and it's depending on migration limits then, which temperatures you could withstand. So it's a question, it's a legal question and more a technical question. So I would say it's between 60 and 80 degrees.
Okay, fine, thank you. Have you sought compostability certifications on any of your products? Do any of the structures use greener, bio-based, biodegradable alternatives to the petro-based additives and coatings?
Yeah, so our papers, our Aegis paper range is recyclable, and we don't intend to put it into composting because we are thinking in circularity. We want to keep the raw material. We don't want that the raw material is lost by biodegradation. So therefore, we are focusing clearly on recycling in the paper waste stream. We have an additional paper that is also compostable, but that's not Aegis paper.
Okay, yeah, I agree with the circularity is, in my view, recycling things is far better than composting, where it is easy enough to recycle. It seems to be a more logical thing to do.
But if compostability is the main goal and the customer has a different approach, we have also papers that are compostable, sealable papers.
Are your paper grades PVDC free?
Yes, all of them.
That's a very hot topic amongst the UK retailers again.
Yeah, and we have experience with PVDC coatings, and in 2019 we asked ourselves, should we reanimate that and start to use that technology again, because it's so easy to achieve a great barrier, it's sealable, it's a great material, but clearly we came to the point that we don't want to go that, in my opinion, dead end road, because it can't be the future, and we are clearly focusing on only PVDC free grades.
Okay. Are oxygen and water barriers still under development? Can the barrier be used for coffee, where oxygen is absolutely the #1 enemy?
Yeah, so with coffee, we are really reaching the stars. So this is a very high requiring product, and the barrier is very high. The shelf life is long, and for these applications, and also in plastic packaging, it's used aluminum foil, silicon oxide coated polyester, aluminum oxide coated polyester. So these high barrier grades we don't have today, and nobody has them today in the market. But an oxygen barrier, we are coming close, but it's under development.
Do you see sort of getting into an area where maybe, say, snacks, potato crisps and things like that, you would have an oxygen barrier that would be suitable for that, and moisture barrier?
Not available today, but there was a question from another in the chat as well, asking for refrigerated goods, and for this food, I guess in 3 to 6 months we will have a solution.
Yeah, so these are more achievable than the reaching for the stars with coffee.
Correct.
Interesting question here. What is the 5 in the 95-5? What sort of materials make it up?
Yeah, so generally answered, it's a sealing layer and some barrier material. So this is still fossil-based material, or at least a non-paper part. So we don't want to share our secrets here, but let's say in general, it's more or less a sealing layer.
Yeah, because fundamentally paper doesn't seal, does it?
Obviously, yes.
Which is always the tricky part with paper.
Yeah.
How is the insect protection achieved in the paper packaging?
This is a question that is not so easy to answer, because there are insects that are able to bite themselves through plastic packaging as well. They go through orientated layers as well. So we do it with our combination of paper with a sealing layer that is giving a tight package that is not porous anymore, that any small insects can go through. Yeah.
Okay. Another question here, which is sort of one of the effects of COVID on the market. We're hearing reports of problems within particularly the corrugated and paper recycling streams because of the shift from traditional high street shopping, where the stores recovered all of their boxes and recycled them quite efficiently, to online delivery. And we're hearing stories that is affecting the supply of recycled or boxes back to be recycled. What's Mondi's view on that? Is it affecting you, and do you think this is a blip, or do you think that the systems will have to change?
I think it's...
Graeme, go ahead if you want.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say we all know there's an issue out there somewhere. I think the benefit that Mondi has is that because we're fully integrated, we've got that aspect of site. So the ability to be able to manage your own forest, ability to process and control their own mills. And just next week, as a little trailer, there is going to be a press release regarding a collaboration that we have with Tesco in Central Europe, where we are actually collecting their waste materials and processing it in a closed loop situation. So there will be more and more collaborations directly with this type of mechanism to make sure that we're keeping fibres in circulation and making sure that we are more robust than others as far as in guaranteeing our supply chain.
And do you, if the shift in purchase behaviour is maintained, do you see there being problems with the recycling rates, or is this just a it's going through a different route to get it back, and it's just not as efficient in terms of getting the boxes back to the recycling plants?
I think it's a slight blip at the moment while people get to find the new norm. And sorry for using that term, it's a bit cliched, but there will be a degree of normality return, I'm sure. But that aspect of understanding where the waste is, collecting it, and making sure that it's processed is it's a valuable asset. I mean, we need to make sure that we respect that material, not just for the environment, but for the fact it's sustainably the right thing to do for a business. So yeah, there will be a new way of working, slightly different to existing, but not so different.
Just to link that to a question from the same gentleman, he's asking, you know, recycling centres are reporting they cannot recycle some of the new plastic paper trays due to the lack of ease of separation. Is this a concern for Mondi and the products that Mondi are putting out, or do you feel that you've overcome these issues?
I mentioned before that we try to make sure that the materials that we are developing at the moment don't disrupt existing technology for sorting and separation. We do have a vast amount of our own knowledge on being able to recycle these materials, so we've got a good idea of what can and can't be done. We appreciate that the material needs to be collected first and foremost and then sorted. And that element of engaging with the consumer to make sure that it's collected in the right waste stream is first and foremost the most critical thing that we need to do in order to make sure that it gives our product the highest possibility to be sorted and recycled. I can appreciate where some of them could be a challenge, but where we try to do it, we try to make sure that the materials are don't disrupt recyclability. And as I say, if we can engage with our consumer in order to make sure it goes in the paper bin, then that's the best route that we can.
A couple of questions very similar now, asking about the carbon footprint of the paper compared with its plastic equivalents. What's the story with like for like in terms of carbon footprint?
Always difficult to compare like for like, because taking into account where the product's been made, where it's been transported. This element of LCAs is great and frustrating at the same time. But I go back to the fact of making sure that you keep the material that's being processed, that waste material, in circulation, being able to make sure that once it's been consumed, it doesn't find its way into a landfill that is actually fully recycled, is the best way to make sure you have the lowest impact possible in CO2 footprint or environmental impact in general. Because it shouldn't just be CO2 that we look at, it should be the full environmental impact of that product.
Slightly different question now. Is it possible to make a rigid and or transparent paper?
It is possible to make a translucent paper, let's call it like this. You do it with a special technology, but this technology causes in a paper that is quite brittle. So the brittleness of the paper makes the barrier coating crack sensible, and also when you run it through the packaging line, you won't get a good result on that. So we are focusing clearly on our technology that is producing opaque white or brown paper. Both colors are possible. Transparent windows, as they are in the market, made of plastic. This combination is critical for us. Pure paper is not so easy to process, so therefore it's not available today.
Okay. Just having a quick look down, conscious of time. There's one here for Paul, really. How can the participants today get hold of the contact details for the guys at Mondi to discuss further their offerings?
Yeah, I will, as part of the outputs of today's session, every registrant will get an email with a link to view the video, plus Graeme and Andreas's contact details. So that will be done tomorrow.
Okay. Very specific application question now, which I'm intrigued by as well. Do you have any solutions for liquid products such as hand soaps or liquid laundry?
Not within the Aegis paper range, but we have other papers where we have a combination of paper and plastics with a lower paper share but higher than 50%, depends on the solution, 60, 70%, and that can be used for liquids. These thin coatings that we are using for Aegis paper to make it recyclable and very high paper share, the liquids would go through, and paper is very sensible to moisture, so it wouldn't work. But if you want to have less plastics, more paper, we have a high Protex range that could be suitable for the application. We could talk about it.
Okay, and on a similar vein here, someone's just asked, with dry dog food or pet food type products, they have up to 14% oil content. Would you be able to deal with an oil content as high as that?
Depending on the oil and which kind of paper we would need to use for it. So we have made the experience with fatty sausages where we could use our standard one. And we have made the experience with some pet food because they had low molecular fats that were going quite easily through the paper. We needed a special paper. So it really depends on your application. We should have a test for it, but we have greaseproof paper, yes.
Okay, I think that has covered the questions that have come in. Some questions have been covered by other questions and answers. So, yeah, I think it's back to you, Paul.
Thank you, Barry, and thank you, Graeme and Andreas, for a really fascinating and insightful introduction to Mondi's new Aegis range, and for fielding so many questions. I think that's the most questions we've ever had for our webinars that we've been doing over the last 10 months or so. So as I said a moment ago, you will be getting a recording of this broadcast by tomorrow, plus Graeme and Andreas's contact details. So thank you again for attending today. Our next webinar is 2 weeks today, Thursday, 11th of March, where we'll be covering sustainable packaging innovations. And I'd like to thank you all for attending. Stay safe and look forward to seeing you again at a future PackHub webinar. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Paul.
Thanks
to the PackHub.
Yeah, thanks to everybody. Have a nice day.